Hey everybody, this is So Many Sequels, your book club for movies. I'm Josh.
I'm Garrett.
And I'm David.
This week on the show, Game Night goes retro and we talk about Clue, the movie that one Letterboxd reviewer called the dumbest and smartest movie ever made.
Clue was one of my favorite movies growing up and one of my favorite games to play. And I will still argue with anyone who doesn't think that Tim Curry should have been nominated for an Oscar for his performance.
Garrett, stop shouting.
I'm not shouting.
We also are going to look at how to modernize this cult classic and keep the iconic multiple endings going. And we also talk about some of our favorite game characters from the game.
All that and more this week on So Many Sequels. Be sure you check us out online at somanysequels.com to check out all of our past episodes and links to our social media where you can follow us and join in on the conversation about your favorite movies. Without further ado, enjoy the show. David, I was going to tell you a story real quick. So I went to, I mostly because you'll appreciate it. Garrett will get it too, but you'll appreciate it. I went to a concert recently. I went to see Bruce Springsteen. Okay,
The Boss.
The Boss. First time I've ever seen The Boss. Real excited about it. I've been a big fan for a long time. He was one of my bucket list concerts I wanted to see before I couldn't. He's old.
It's true. Who knows how much longer he'll tour for?
Exactly. So I get to this show. I'm amped up. Yeah, they're getting ready to come out. They start walking out. And there's no real fanfare, which was surprising. The band just walked out. But in my excitement and hype for the boss himself, I forgot that the E Street Band themselves are also quite legendary.
Yeah.
And when I saw Max Weinberg walk out and sit at that drum set, I lost my shit. I forgot that Max Weinberg is in the E Street Band.
I know.
I know him as a late night comedy legend.
I honestly, that was the biggest thing I missed when Conan, when he left. It was like I honestly, it felt like something was missing from Conan as a show.
It is.
Loved it. I loved his last episode though, where he played himself out, and Conan was like, "It's the only car operated by Backbeat." He's just.
I was just as excited to see him after he appeared, and I wondered if anyone else in the arena thought the same.
Oh yeah, well, if I'd been there next to you, we would have been the two guys cheering, Weinberg.
Well, see, the great thing about this podcast, is that now we have a setup where you and Garrett can go off on wrestling tangents, and then you and I can do Conan tangents.
Yes.
So you are like a key factor in the tangent world.
Yes, I'm a unifier. I'm not a divider. I'm a unifier, right? And I bring people together for over various fandoms.
Sure.
We the people.
I'm a dabbler, but I'm also an intense dabbler. I know a lot about a lot of things.
You do.
So this podcast, is it mainly about movies? Are we your book club for movies? Yes, we are. But also, we're a secret podcast for wrestling. We're a secret podcast for Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. Like, if you can have a podcast about a podcast.
I really love the idea of a podcast within a podcast.
Right?
I'm sure that's been done before.
Secretly, you get a little bit of detail, a little bit of juice in there about anything and everything.
Speaking of tangents, we're on one. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of this episode, shall we? We are doing a whole month of game-inspired, game-themed movies, right? Video games, regular games. Today we're talking about a movie based on a board game. We're talking about Clue. And honestly, I'm gonna have Garrett take this because he's the Clue Meister. He is the king of Clue, as David is the king of Disney.
Oh, okay.
Of this show.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
So tell us about Clue. Why are we doing Clue? What does Clue mean to you? Blue's
Clue,
Clue.
one of my favorite movies of all time. It is in my Letterboxd top 4. It's always a movie that
Banger
I
of a-
underestimate. I underestimate how many times I've seen this movie. And I only remember how many times I've seen it when I watch it, and I'm able to just say the lines with the movie, sometimes before the people say it themselves. Sometimes I catch myself laughing because one of those where I look down the line and I know where the joke is going, and I chuckle now, and then I laugh real hard whenever it hits. So it's a movie that I've just watched since I was a kid. It is based loosely on the board game, the Hasbro board game. It's got an all-star cast: Martin Mull, Tim Curry, Colleen Campbell, I believe is her last name. I can't remember all of them.
Oh, Colleen Camp.
Yeah, Colleen Camp. Thank you.
Yeah, she's in Police Academy and stuff. Yeah.
So many. Christopher Lloyd, Michael McKean.
Oh yeah.
Just banger after banger of a star, especially for 1985. They are all brought to a mysterious house. It's revealed that they are all being blackmailed, and they are meeting their blackmailer tonight, and they can either wait for the police to come, or they can take matters into their own hands, and hilarity and dramatic craziness ensues. It's a tight 90-minute movie with 3 different endings worked in. So it's got a lot. And for me, it's just perfect. But I'll let other people talk because I said a lot already.
Yeah, David, do you have a history with Clue at all?
The movie, no. The board game, I loved Clue as a kid. I wanted to wear I wanted to wear purple representing my Professor Plum mane. I always play as Professor Plum, but I have one purple shirt and I couldn't find it. So Mr. Green it is. And honestly, after watching this movie, big fan of Mr. Green. Michael McKean, hilarious. And you would know him from he's in a lot of things. I couldn't tell you specifically one thing that he's that's his most well-known, because everybody's answer is going to be different. Michael McKean's hilarious in this. Anyway, the movie itself, never seen it before. Didn't even honestly know about it until about 2 or 3 years ago.
Whoa!
And that is because, and then we'll get into it later, it was not the most successful film, but it does have a cult following. And so, it just kind of glossed over me. To give a few, early thoughts on it, I thought it was funny. I thought it almost had something. It was a little convoluted at times. Like, it was kind of like I was trying to understand what exactly the stakes were, what exactly, Gary, you did a good job of explaining it a minute ago, but when they were explaining in the movie, I was like, okay, so they have how long to win, and who, and then they do what now? So I was a little bit trying to keep up with them, and I think the movie wanted to have a really sharp, quick back and forth. But there were some times where there was it felt like there was dead air early on. There was a lot of people kind of not sure whose turn it was to speak next. That said, as it got going, and as the sort of the hijinks and hilarity and everybody running from room to room started to ensue, I really started to get into it. I really felt like I could envision this as a stage play. And I have since learned that the screenplay has been adapted to a stage play. So, I really started to get into it by the end. I was thinking about the board game the whole time. I loved playing Clue. And I told that to my wife, and she was like, oh, I hated Clue. And I was like, well, you never played with me. You never played Clue with this guy over here.
Well, that will lead into my next question, but I'll talk about. I don't have much of history with it either. I think a little bit more than you, David. I definitely have known about it for years, and I had seen it as a kid. I don't remember it clicking with me in quite the same way as it did with Garrett, where he really can quote it as it happens. I've seen it done. This is not an exaggeration.
Yeah.
I can't do that with it, but I remember watching it, and I remember not thinking either way about it. But I like it a lot more now as an adult. It's very funny. You're right, David. It does get a little convoluted at times. I think that doesn't really hurt it too much, but I do get it. And the cast is great. I had to do a double take when I was doing some research because I found out that this movie came out like 6 months before Back to the Future did.
Yes.
And
Yes, I
somehow
wanted to
Christopher
mention that.
Lloyd has aged 40 years
I wanted to mention that.
at least. It blew my mind. I never realized how much they must have aged him for Back to the Future.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Because in Clue, he doesn't look old at all. He doesn't look anything like crazy old Doc Brown.
He doesn't even seem to have like graying hair. Like his hair is kind of like a grayish brown.
He looks great, and he's such a different kind of.
I went to the DU Venetian Center.
He's such a different kind of funny than he is in Back to the Future. So I like that, getting some of that range from him.
I also love that in terms of the film, the events of Clue are set 1 year before when Barney goes back in time. So 1954. Just that was what Doc Brown was doing. That's where he got the nuclear bombs and all that.
Oh, there's a whole expanded universe, isn't there?
They could figure it out.
Wow. Well, so before we get deeper into the movie, I wanted to go back and touch on the game because you, David, talked a lot more about your love of the game, and Garrett has a strong love of the movie. So I want to talk about how well do you think they adapted it? I feel like it's hard to adapt a board game to anything, but if you're going to do it, something that's pseudo story based like Clue is probably a pretty good bet. So how do we feel about how the board game translated to the screen?
I thought that, they did a really good job in certain ways. It was kind of ham-fisted in others, like, here are all of the weapons. They just like hand you all of the board game weapons and they pull them out and they just like look like someone took the toys and blew like the little figures and blew them up. That was a little bit ham-fisted. Like they could have just had them around the house, you know what I mean? But I think the thing about Clue that if you wanted to make Clue today, you could do it and do a completely different story. You can tell the story, I think, a lot of different ways. All you need is, basically mansion, assortment of weapons and 6 suspects. I mean, there's plenty
secret
of
passages.
Secret passages. There's plenty of ways you could tell that story, and you could tell it differently than how they told this one. You could tell it more seriously. You could tell it more comedically. You could, there's a lot of range there. So I think they did about as good a job as you can do at adapting a story. And I think going for laughs was probably the smart way to go, because I think that inherently people are going to go, a board game based on, or a movie based on Clue, like there's going to be some skepticism. But I think anytime you mix murder, mystery, and comedy, you're going to have a little bit of fun. So I think they did a pretty good job.
I think one of the things for me as a kid, the best part about Clue is that it's always different. You play the game and it's always different. It could be the same, but it might be different. You have to have enough people to make it work. Growing up, I had a family of 4, and so that was an easy game for us to play together. That's enough amount of people to where it's difficult. And so I really like the way that they take that and the way that they incorporate that into the movie, where they give you 3 different endings where it could be this and it could be that and it could be this. And the way that they line it up all could be equally plausible if you just, you have to suspend your amount of reality. And you talk about it being convoluted, both of you. And that's one of the things that I feel like the movie addresses well, because in every single ending, there's always there's still one thing I don't understand. And there's someone who chimes in and goes, one thing? And so it addresses the fact that it's a little messy and they play with it. And I appreciate that. I think we looked it up. And if I remember right, the way that they marketed the movie at the time was you never knew which ending you were going to get. It could be any one of the 3. It wasn't that they gave you all 3 of them.
Right.
And I actually think that's a good idea. Josh, I think you got into it a little bit and said that kind of hindered it. But for me, I think that if you market it now, it gives you know how to do it a little more. And you could say, so which ending will you see, or, who did it, or, something kind of like that. I don't know. I think it could be a fun experiment to have a different ending especially for a movie like Clue.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I had seen was that in hindsight, the director had said that he believes that putting multiple endings in theaters hurt the movie's box office because people were kind of overwhelmed with the idea of, well, if there's 3 endings, which one should I go to? That's what the studio was hoping they were thinking. But what they were actually thinking was, well, there are 3 endings. I don't know which one to go to, so I just won't go.
Yeah.
That's just as plausible, you know. I don't know how it was actually marketed at the time. I don't know what the trailers were like. Did they even tell people that there were multiple endings, or were people just confused? You know?
Yeah, because if you got ending B, you were probably like, oh,
what?
well, that's weird. Because like one of them feels like it actually satisfies the story pretty well. One of them, we can get into this a little bit more later, but one of them feels like it satisfies the story pretty well, and one of them you're like, okay. And I would be pretty, I don't know, I'd be pretty disappointed with version B. But yeah, it's a gimmick that is risky, you know, because there's you hope. I think in today's day and age, you're counting on people wanting to be like a completionist, like to see all of them. But I think in 1985, I think people just walked away and went, I don't know what that was about. Or did you hear there's another ending? What happens in that one? And then the person just tells you, you know, and you go, oh, okay. You know what I mean? So like you didn't have that same level of, today we have that level of social media discourse where people would be, you'd hop on TikTok instantly and somebody would be comparing the 3 endings of Clue. You know what I mean?
I think it could be done potentially well today if it were one of those Netflix series that's like choose your own adventure,
like Kaleidoscope or something,
so that everyone then you're playing Clue, you're playing the show that you're watching. That could be fun. Netflix could call me.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. It's not a bad idea.
I'll sell that idea to them.
I was also the most recent version of this idea that comes to mind was X-Men Origins Wolverine had 3 different post-credit scenes. Not 3 different endings, but 3 different post-credit scenes in which you would, you didn't know which one you were going to get. And I don't even know if it was this, I don't know if it was by theater location or if it was by screen, but there were 3 different post-credit scenes. One was Deadpool revealing himself to still be alive. One was Logan walking into a bar in Japan, and I don't remember what the other one was. Oh well, but yeah. So that's the only other time I can think of them of a studio trying something similar.
I don't even think I knew about that.
Yeah,
interesting.
I think on the DVD they just play all of them at different points during the credits.
Yeah. There's a lot of characters in this movie.
A lot of characters,
all very strong.
But as things went on, Mr. Green, Mike McKean. Was unexpected. Oh, is Garrett frozen? That's new.
Now we're back. Yeah, I froze.
There you go.
For the first time.
Yeah.
Keep going.
So,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I wasn't ready for Professor Plum to be like a sex maniac, and that was off-putting because he's my favorite character. He was my glasses representation as a child, and who else? I actually was surprised that they didn't go more cartoonish with Colonel Mustard. Martin Mull was great, especially as the movie goes on, you start to understand their individual quirks more. And so the longer it went on, the more I was like, okay, I'm digging this interpretation. But I thought they were going to go more like, monocle and big mustache. I was picturing Andrew. And when Martin Mull showed up, I was like, who's this slob? They claim is Colonel Mustard. Anyway.
The Colonel I've ever seen.
Everybody was great, though. I'll tell you what, and Madeline Kahn, hilarious.
Yeah, you got to talk about Tim Curry obviously just everything that he does in this movie. When he is running down the events of the night, it's one of the funniest things that I have ever seen in my life. There are very few things that I consistently laugh as hard at now as I did when I was like a 7 or 8 year old kid watching a movie. And every time, it starts with him screaming that he's shouting, and then the candlestick falls on his head. And then from that moment on, everything that Tim Curry does is just absolute perfection. And this is like, for me, this is the movie that I think of when I think of Tim Curry. And I know everybody has a different type of Tim Curry that they think of too. This for me is the essential Tim Curry.
Yeah. This one to me, this is like, interesting enough, this is like the least Tim Curry I've seen Tim Curry beat, I think. Because he doesn't have that like kind of more obnoxious British voice that he does sometimes. That yeah, I can't do it. But you know that sound I'm going for. Well, yeah, I whatever. Anyway, but it was really entertaining, especially as things got more and more absurd. What about you, Josh? Standout characters?
My favorite character is Colonel Mustard because of how dumb he is. He's so dumb.
He's so dumb.
You're just dumb for the whole movie. And that makes me laugh. He's Colonel Mustard. He's the government guy, and he's dumb. He makes me laugh. Michael McKean is also very funny in it. I will give him props. But
line of the night, I'll tell you.
I was going to ask if anybody had favorite lines. I knew Garrett would, but
my wife, having not known about it, instantly fell in love with I hated her so much that flames on the side of my face, heavy breathing. I did like that. She instantly fell in love with that line. For me, I know this is the last line technically in the movie, but when Mr. Green stands there and goes, "Good night, Chief. I'm gonna go home and have sex with my wife," and like gives this big stupid grin on a freeze frame, it was honestly, I laughed so hard.
It's really
so
good.
Much harder than maybe the line deserves, but I thought that was hilarious. Sleep with my wife. Sex with, he says, "I'm going to sleep with my wife." Get the line right.
Yeah.
It's difficult for me because there are so many. I talked about the I'm shouting. That's always one for me that stands out. From another one is the dynamic between Colonel Mustard and Miss Peacock when they're talking about what to do. And he says, "This is War Peacock. You can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. Ask any cook and they'll tell you the same thing." And she says, "But look what happened to the cook." And it is just so funny. Again, everything for this movie, it's just blink and you could miss it because it's connected in one way or another. When Madeline Kahn says that her husband is lying around all day, and then later you find out that he's dead, and they piece that together. Just every little bit, especially the rewatchability. That's what I enjoy about this so much is you can connect this dot with this, and then you can see different pieces. When they do the rundown, you can see that people are missing from room to room, and so they do a really good job with all. I can't pick anything. Sorry.
There's a lot of good wordplay. I can't remember the exact series of lines, but she says, she says something like, "No, I'm not." And he's like, "You're not? No, you're not. Oh, it's a double negative. A double negative is proof positive that you did this," or something like that. And he goes, "You'll not make an idiot out of me. You don't need my help for that. You're right." Or something like that. Right. It's that fast paced, kind of like Marx Brothers vaudeville kind of speed. This could be the Muppets. You'd have to remove Colleen Camp, but this could be the Muppets, and it would. Well, but otherwise, it's that I when it started to get to that, I was down for it. Early on, it was a little stiff, but he gets there. The weirdest character for me is Mr. Body, aka depending on which ending you have, is some kind of character. He seemed like a character from a different movie when he first came in. They're all like sitting around talking, and they're about from Washington. He comes in, "Hey, what's going on? Oh, I know her. Yeah, all right." And I'm like, Who's this guy? Just walked in from a different film.
Yeah.
I got all the evidence here. Take it. Why don't you kill this guy?
Did you have any lines that stuck with you?
I think my favorite bit of wordplay in there was from Wadsworth when he said communism was just a red herring. And I also really liked Wadsworth. Frankly, Scarlet, I don't give a damn.
Yes.
Was an excellent homage to one of the all-time great lines in cinema.
Gone with the Wind, yeah.
It's one of those movies where, and I love a movie like this where some of the jokes go so fast that it necessitates repeat viewings. Because some of them will just blow by you, and that's what I love about Knives Out movies, to tie those into. I think this definitely probably had some inspiration involved for Rian Johnson,
Rian Johnson has said that he, in his editing room, one of the posters on the wall is Clue. So
awesome.
I think he's got a bunch of, I think we've talked about murder mysteries in the past, Like I'm glad that we got to add another one here during Game Month.
Yeah, right. It seems like we're always looking for excuses to add in a good whodunit. And speaking of whodunits. We've talked about how this movie works as a comedy real well. Does it work as a mystery, and does it need to? Are my two questions. It feels a little leading to ask it that way, but did you find yourself watching it and thinking along about trying to solve the mystery?
I was super confounded. Because, and this is why ending 3 is the best ending, I think, and obviously it has to. I assume the canon ending, like the or, whatever the actual ending. Because I was watching it and I kept saying to myself, I just kept saying, everybody's accounted for. Like in terms of the way the movie is edited and shot, no one could have done this because everyone has been shown to be either with someone else or not there when this happened. So I was watching and going, there's no way it could be one person.
Mm-hmm.
Either has to be multiple people. It has to be none of it has to be none of the 6.
That's how the board game works too, though, right? Everyone's accountable. You know.
And so I'm watching it like it's gotta be. And so it was around the time. I think it was around the time that the policeman and Yvette died. I thought to myself, it's got to be, the answer has got to be that one of each of these murders was committed by one of the 6. No, there's no one murderer going around making all these kills. Each of them has made a kill or something like that, right? And that was what I thought. I was like, that's the only thing that really makes sense. They can say something else, but the only thing that makes sense is that 6 separate murders have occurred this evening. And so I appreciated it when that was one of the endings. But that said, yeah, I mean, other than the setup, because the setup with the idea of the cops are coming and blackmail and who's blackmailing and, but why is he giving us this opportunity? That stuff was made it for a really hard, start. But by the time they're midway through, I stopped caring about that. I was fine.
Yeah, okay. The mystery is definitely not the strongest part of this movie. But again, that's where I encourage you to do the rewatchability, because if you listen to his breakdowns of the endings, the various different ones, you can go back and watch and you see when they run into the billiard room where Yvette is, there are people missing to start and then they show up again. If you go into the kitchen when they find the cook, there are people missing and then they show up again. And so it is, again, that's why I say it's plausible. They give you little pieces throughout again, I've seen this movie hundreds of times. And this time I noticed that when they are burning the evidence into the fire, you see clearly a picture of Colonel Mustard and the driver. And that was the first time I've ever seen that in that picture that they give you there. So they put pieces in there that it is perfectly plausible that one person could put things together and be like, hey, I recognize this person. And then I see this person here and now they're here. And then I'm here for and bang, 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 bang. It's not the strongest one, but it doesn't need to be because everything else that is more important is better.
Right.
Fascinating.
What do you think, Jeff? What do you think, Josh?
About the mystery?
About whether or not it's a good mystery. Did you find yourself wondering?
I'm going to say no. And it's not because, it's not because I don't think it's good. And it's mostly because I don't know that I really came into it with that mindset. I don't know if I saw it as much of a mystery as I did, this is a movie about a board game. It felt more like watching a comedy than watching a real mystery and trying to figure out who did it. So I don't think I came into it that way. If I did, I can see myself being disappointed because they don't take a ton of care for it, but they do take some, you said, like Garrett said, there's a bunch of stuff in the background that you can find if you really are looking.
Oh yeah. They
just make it really hard for you.
I'm sure
but that's part of the fun too.
And I don't really doubt that those moments were there, but I was watching this, what I'm watching for, right, is the idea that it's, made person, right? And so some people would be missing, but it was never the same person missing each time, right? Or never, so I'm like, it can't be one person. I was pretty intrigued by the mystery of it because that's the whole point of the board game of Clue, figure out who done it, right? So I was like, is it going to be one? Because anyway, I think they did an okay job. It just had a lot of moving parts. It had a lot of moving things. Like there was a lot of uncertainty to it. And that can have two outcomes, because you can have so much uncertainty in a mystery that the reveal is not satisfying, a la Ending B with Mrs. Peacock, or you can stick the landing because you've woven the truth in there for people who are really looking and watching. So it's tough to stick.
Mm-hmm. I see.
I think.
Yeah. Oh crap! I had a question and I lost it at the last minute. I'll get there. Remind me to cut this.
Garrett, did you have a main character you played as when you would play Clue?
I was always Colonel Mustard, sir.
Always a Colonel Mustard guy. Fascinating.
Okay. I remembered my question.
There we go. Back now.
So from what I could tell, there's been several attempts at doing this again. There's obviously been the stage play that I believe is considered successful. I know it tours on a regional level at least. And then there was I found a very short-lived limited series on a network I'd never heard of in like 2011. And then apparently there is a script in the works. They hired a screenwriter last August at Universal.
Yeah.
To write a Clue remake. So my question was going to be, how do you make Clue work? How does Clue 2023 work? Movie, TV series, modern times, old days?
I think, go ahead. I'll let Garrett, you go first.
So for me, I think you modernize it. But the danger, or the exciting thing about Clue is, like we talked about at the beginning of the show, you have a wide canvas of which to work with, right? It would be a bad idea to modernize it with the idea of remaking the 1984 version. I think that would be a failure. That would be stupid, and I hope they don't do that. I think that you should capitalize on the fact that whodunits are really popular right now. They're on the rise, and I think that you should take it more seriously, because if you come in swinging with a comedy, I think it should be funny. Don't get me wrong, but I think that if you make it a full-on comedy, you're still going to compare it to this one, and I don't know if that's a winning battle.
That is, I mean, yeah, it's going to be hard on those grounds. That said, unfortunately, I think the rights are with. Well,
did I have it wrong? Was it 20th?
No, who has the rights? Is it 20th Century or is it Universal?
I think at one point it was Universal, but I could have mixed it up.
Because if it's with 20th Century Studios, guess who owns 20th Century Studios now? And guess who also owns the Muppets? You do.
Oh my gosh, the Muppets Clue. Is there a Muppet Clue board game? There should be.
I don't know, but that's my offshoot answer is Muppets Clue, because you want to know who they attached to direct back in 2019, and I guess it fell through, was a guy named the co-creator of Flight of the Conchords, Jay Boban. I don't remember his first name, who directed Muppets Most Wanted. So there's a lot of stars aligning there. But yeah, I think you modernize it a little bit. There are new Clue game characters, so you don't have to have the exact same cast of characters. You could have Miss Orchid, who wears pink. You could have Monsieur Brunette, who's the Mr. Brown, basically. So you don't have to have the exact same cast of characters. I think you obviously bring back Professor Plum, played by Ron Swanson, but Nick Offerman, called him by his character name. Anyway, I think I think this one was very referential of early Agatha Christie, where they set it in like the 50s and it's kind of an older time. I don't know if you do the same thing where like maybe you set it in the 90s or something like that, but I think you look towards what are the kind of mystery movies being made today, and you kind of go with that, emulate that. But I think at the core, you still have to have the house, you still have to have the weapons, you still have to have, the window in which we need to solve this murder, that kind of thing. I think I think that's okay to stick with, but you can tell a very different story. You can tell it in a different way. I think there's lots of options.
I'm going to go with the idea that I mentioned earlier, which is a choose your own adventure streaming series. And I don't think it should be a remake of the 1984 movie, but I do think it should be made in the spirit of that. Not quite that level of absurd comedy. I think the comedy should be updated to be a little more witty and subtle, but it should stay fast. And I also like the idea of keeping it set in that almost, it's like an old era, but it's also timeless. Like you can't quite place it. You just know it's not today. Because I think that works for the Poirot movies happening right now, at least for Murder on the Orient Express, it did. So I think it could work for Clue too. I think you could stick with that time period, update the writing to be a little more reflective of today's humor, and then add your gimmick in the style of a Netflix choose your own adventure thing, and I think you might have gold.
I think it's
I'd watch it at least. It'd be gold for me.
Some other options. You give it to you hire Jordan Peele to do it. What would he do?
The gritty remake.
Craziness ensues. You know.
All right. Well, are there any closing thoughts on Clue, the movie, before we move into the last half of the show?
Trying to think.
The last part.
Well, do you want to talk about the different endings? Do you want to talk about the specifically what's different in them, or anything like that?
I don't.
Okay.
Because I don't know them as well as Garrett does. So it depends on if he does.
So when you guys watched them, did they play it? Did they all three play in order? Or did you just get one of them?
They all three play.
That's the only way I've ever seen it too, is all playing in a row. I've never seen just one attached.
Anymore, that's the way that they play it. Otherwise, it would be super short.
Right.
Yeah, I was surprised by that too. You cut out those two additional endings, and it's under 90 minutes by a good amount.
It is. I do kind of wish that you could play it. I do kind of wish that now there was an option, because you can watch this if you have Amazon Prime. You can watch it for no additional cost, and I wish that it did give you like some kind of way to select an ending, because it does kind of weirdly funk the flow up at the end, having all three back to back. Because I'm trying to picture like, okay, where did they leave off? You know, by the third ending, I'm like, I don't remember where we left off to do this ending. But anyway, yeah, the last one's the best one, I think. I like that one
it just don't matter anymore.
It's great. That one.
Well,
yeah.
I'm sure that's why they chose that one to be the last.
It has
one.
it has that great McKean line at the end.
Yeah, you can't beat that.
Anyhow, no, I don't have much else to say.
Me neither.
I tell you what.
What?
The preview for my rating. I enjoyed myself, and I didn't know if that was going to happen. I'd never seen this movie before, and I really enjoyed it.
Okay.
All right.
Well, how did people feel about it when it came out and hit theaters in 1984?
Boy, oh boy, not great. It did not do so hot. So this movie debuted way back in December 13th of 1985.
5. I've been saying 4 for a while.
That's okay. Yeah, but you're right. It did come out the same year as Back to the Future, and yet, we got
to get you back to 1985.
Anyway. You could have, it's funny is you could have told Professor Plum, the president's going to be Ronald Reagan, and he'd be like, Ronald Reagan, the actor. You know what I mean? Any other Christopher?
It's all a feedback loop of Christopher Lloyd.
Christopher Lloyd. Anybody else want to do a Christopher Lloyd impression before the show's over?
We've done. Haven't we hurt him enough?
No. Anyway, I could do Christopher Lloyd jokes all the time. Anyway, so the movie.
Wonderful.
Yeah, as Christopher Lloyd said, the number 6 spot to $2 million. At number 1 that weekend was Rocky 4. That's the one where Rocky fights Drago, I believe. My favorite Rocky movie. If I can change. Now we're gonna do Stallone. You can change.
Rocky 4 is your favorite Rocky movie?
I think so.
Hey, we'll get to it one day.
Yeah.
He fights Drago.
We'll get to it.
If I can change, you can change.
Well, maybe we won't, actually.
At number 2, and I think this is another murder mystery, The Jewel of the Nile. I don't know who's in this, but anyway, The Jewel of the Nile was the number 2 movie that weekend. and it brought in a lot of money. It brought in $6.6 million. At number 3, you have Spies Like Us. I believe that's Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase. At number 4, you have White Knights. I don't know who's in that. At number 5, this is going to sound like a movie that I'm making up. It's called Santa Claus the Movie. And that's not the Santa Claus, and it's not, it's Santa Claus the Movie. Anyway, so Clue, yes, debuted at number 6 to $2 million. It would go on to make a grand total of $14 million in its entire run in theaters. Never dropping below $1 million, but it was pulled out of theaters after about 5 weeks. So yeah, I think there was some difficulty with the confusion, which ending, we were getting and things like that. For the year of 1985, Clue would finish with, like I said, 14.6 million. That's the number 57 spot of the year. What a year, 1985. The number 1 movie, Back to the Future. The number 2 movie, Rambo: First Blood Part 2.
Wow.
AKA Second Blood.
AKA The Deuce.
At number 3, Rocky 4 again. So big year for both Christopher Lloyd and Sylvester Stallone. At number 4, The Color Purple. Spielberg, yeah. There you go. Mm-hmm. And at number 5, Out of Africa. We've talked about this a couple times recently. Back in 1985, only 3 movies in the United States made more than $100 million. And it was those top 3 I told you about. So there's your wrap for 1985. We've been to 1985 a few times, done a few reviews, and we'll probably be back soon enough. So with that, I'll turn it over to the letterbox game.
All right.
I am reigning king. Here, my goal.
I gotta add to this too. I looked up Jewel of the Nile, and it is not a murder mystery. It is the sequel to Romancing the Stone.
Oh, fascinating.
Starring Michael Douglas, Kathleen Turner, and Danny DeVito.
What is all right? We gotta check. That's a sequel. Hey,
it's a sequel.
Put that on the big old. We got that list somewhere. Put that somewhere in the hopper. Romancing the Stone and Jewel of the Nile. Michael Douglas. Josh, do you do a Michael Douglas impression?
No. Ants. I wouldn't do it on
these ants.
Yeah, I can do that. Ants.
Well,
ants.
Scott, they're ants. I don't know. I can't.
Okay. Anyway. So Letterboxd. Some of the most popular reviews on Letterboxd for Clue. This one's 4 stars. It says, quote, "She had friends who were ... socialists. Gasp." Then the second one is literally just that quote you said earlier, David, about I hated her so much. The flames on the side of my face.
On the side of my face.
4.5 stars. There are 2 types of people in this world: people who like Clue and people who are wrong.
How would Christopher Lloyd say that?
I don't know.
There are 2 types of people. Anyway, go ahead.
Wow.
Christopher Lloyd.
The real villain was capitalism all along. And okay, we'll end it with this one. 3 stars. The freeze frame after Mr. Green says, "I'm gonna go home and sleep with my wife. The Breakfast Club is shooketh." Greatest freeze frame of all time. It is,
and the grin on his face, the way he says it, so funny.
So, hearing those, I would say, pretty positive reviews of Clue, what do we think the overall average is going to be on a 5-point scale?
I'll let one of you guys go first.
Ooh.
Because I would do it first and always end up taking the good spot. So
3.6.
Oh, that's very high. That's very high.
I actually think that might be too high, and I regret saying it. But
it's still time to change. Nobody else.
No, I'll keep it.
Yet. Okay.
Maybe I'm trying to throw you all off.
Yeah, maybe.
No, I really thought it was too high.
God, I don't know. This is tough for me.
Could be. Go with your heart.
One way that I'm so skewed one way that the fact that David has never seen it and relatively never heard of it, and that you've only seen it a couple of times or whatever is messing with my brain.
I know. Well, it's a cult classic. You got to remember that, and you were part of the cult.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't get indoctrinated soon enough.
4 stars.
Wow.
Banger.
Hi. So, yeah, what I do know about this movie is that, Garrett is lucky enough to have been a child who would watch this movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
The adults of the time, 1985, did not like it. Siskel, Ebert both hated it, gave it 2 out of 4 stars. Well, they didn't hate it, but they didn't like it. But, when you're a kid, you grow up, it's cult classic. All of a sudden, this movie was a great movie when you were a kid. So I'm trying to think about the Letterboxd community. And the Rotten Tomatoes score, the IMDb score, I don't know. I'm going to say a 3.1.
3.1. We got a 3.1 from David, a 3.6 from me, and a 4.0 from Garrett. We do not have a direct hit this time. And in fact, we need a tiebreaker.
Ooh.
Because this movie is a 3.8.
Wow, look at the Letterboxd community.
Higher than I expected, for sure.
All right.
Okay.
But we need some kind of tiebreaker between Garrett and I.
All right, guys, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to find a tiebreaker for you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to actors.
I'm scared.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go.
I don't know. He's going rogue a little bit. I don't know what this game is.
I'm going to go to actors. I'm going to go to Christopher Lloyd.
Oh, God. He's really on a Christopher Lloyd kick.
The actor? Anyway.
No.
And I am going to sort this by...
Christopher Lloyd could play Joe Biden.
He could.
Hey, we got a big oil spill out here, all right? No
SNL,
joke.
you can call me. Don't worry.
Come on, Jack.
Come on. Hey, I'm not kidding around here. We got
Say
a big
no
oil
malarkey.
spill to clean up, all right?
Say no malarkey.
No malarkey.
Yeah. Okay, what's our tiebreaker here? What are you doing with us and Christopher Lloyd?
Okay. This may have been a bad idea.
Clearly.
It was a bad idea.
You're
guys
making
gonna
us
get
vamp,
this.
so it was...
You're gonna get this. So what I was gonna do is because I'm gonna ask you. I've sorted Christopher Lloyd's movie box, and I was gonna ask, what is his highest average? Like, what is the highest average movie starring Christopher Lloyd? Right? It's too easy though.
Yeah, BTTF, right?
Just go get the Rotten Tomatoes score.
All right. You guys didn't
Yeah,
look at
Rotten
the
Tomatoes score, because I think he's gonna throw us off.
Rotten Tomatoes score.
All right.
I don't care about Rotten Tomatoes.
Now, ladies.
Letterboxd, where it's at.
That's why, that's why Rotten Tomatoes is our tiebreaker. It's secondary.
I was trying to be creative. All right.
I get it. It was fine. You were trying to be creative on the spot. It happens.
Clue. All
I gotta say, I don't know
Here
what
we
to
are.
think about it, though. Okay.
Clue. The problem with Clue is every time you try to search Clue, Google suggests Clueless. So you end up on the wrong page.
I can
All right,
see that.
guys. Clue on Rotten Tomatoes. What do you think on a scale of 1 to... Wow, what a thumbnail. On a scale of 1 to 100, what is it? You guys aren't looking at this thumbnail for Clue that I'm looking at.
Man,
This is critic
I didn't
score,
like
not
it at the
audience
time,
score.
but I know, but it came
I'm
out later.
Yeah,
I
but I'm
guess it
tempted to
would be
go
low.
low.
Based on 34
Right.
reviews.
What? That can't be all.
Do you want me to read the critical consensus?
Yeah, no.
Yeah. Well, it'll tell us whether it's positive or negative, I think.
It probably
That's
will.
true.
I can tell you that if you want to know that part. I mean, I
I
can
feel
narrow
like-
it down for you guys.
Yeah. Go
think it's-
ahead.
Read the consensus.
All right, here we go. A robust ensemble of game actors elevate Clue above its schematic source material, but this farce's reliance on novelty over organic wit makes its entertainment value a roll of the dice.
53.
53 from Josh.
Remember, a 60 is where fresh begins.
Yeah, I'm going to go 64.
64 from Garrett. All right. We do have a winner. No tiebreaker needed. We will not be visiting Metacritic today. The winner is Colonel Mustard himself. It's Garrett.
I'm
Garrett
stunned.
Landis.
I really thought I had that.
Now, it was not a direct hit on Rotten Tomatoes. It was a 68% is what it is.
Really?
Currently on Rotten
Whoa!
Tomatoes.
That does not sound like a positive consensus. It sounds like a polite consensus, but not a positive one.
Yes, I mean, it is very polite. It does allow for, hey, some people might really dig this. So there's that. Right, audience score is 86, which is more in line with the Letterboxd community.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So there you go, Garrett. You win this week. I'll put it on the stats here. I gotta go. I'll be right back. Okay. So if you have to finish the show if you have to wrap up without me, go ahead. But I'll be right back.
Okay. Well, we kind of do have to do that because it's time where we give our own ratings of the movie.
Yes.
So I feel, are you going to give this a 5-star right out the gate? You are. You're not?
Yeah.
Oh, you are.
No,
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair. I think that makes sense. I think it's going to be a 4-star for me. Ultimately.
I get that. We didn't talk about
it's not perfect.
No, the middle part for me, the middle where they're just kind of searching the house 3 separate times. It's repetitive. It's meandering. It takes a little while, and it makes it feel a little long for a short movie.
Yeah. Well,
but for me, everything else is so good that middle part, it's fine.
Yeah. Well, it's short enough that it doesn't overstay its welcome. So any of the confusing parts or parts that might feel like it drag a little bit really don't drag that long, and the pace is upbeat enough, I think, to keep me pretty entertained. So that's 4 stars. That's the best I could do. I tried to look and see if David had logged this on Letterboxd yet, but he hasn't. So I think we're just gonna not know what his score is because I'm not gonna vamp this forever.
It's a mystery.
I'm at the end of it, actually.
It's a mystery what our rating will be.
So unfortunately, because we record this live to tape, as they would say in the old days, David just walked away from the camera. Mid-show, as you heard. We're not even mid-show, into the show. Right before we were about to give our review. So he did say to finish it if he didn't get back in time, so that's what I'm going to do. Thank you all for joining us. It's video game month all April. Find us on SoManySequels.com to get a list of all of our previous episodes. You can get links to our social media channels. We're on pretty much all the ones that you're on. Follow us there. And of course, go to our Patreon at patreon.com/SoManySequels. If you can throw a couple bucks in there to support the show, support us, help us, pay for our website and really small stuff like that. That would be cool. And you get access to our Discord where you get to chat with us about movies, TV, funny stuff, and just have a good time. So go check all those out. We will see you all next time. Bye.